we'll look at our famous person for the day, our famous Ozarker. You got to love that hat. That's a high hat, isn't it? You can't even see the top of it there. Anybody have any idea who this fella was?
He's got to be FBI.
He's almost the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's on the other side. He's on the other team. He was a sort of, a criminal of sorts. Yeah. This is a guy you may or may not have heard of. Titanic Thompson. Has anybody ever heard of Titanic Thompson? All right. A pretty obscure character now, but back in his day, in the early 1900s, he was well known, at least as well known as a hustler could be. Well known enough that a writer of the early 20th century named Damon Runyon wrote a short story sort of loosely based on the Titanic Thompson guy, and that short story was eventually made into Guys and Dolls, a Broadway play, and that eventually was made into film in the 1950s, but it was a very successful play in film. Marlon Brando was in the film version. I think Frank Sinatra may have played this guy. It wasn't the same, it wasn't the name, they didn't use the name Titanic Thompson. But he was a native of Rogers, Arkansas, as you can see there in northwest Arkansas. And Thompson, whose real last name was Thomas, Alvin Thomas was his real name. Titanic Thompson was, the name that people came to know him by. Was a tremendously gifted athlete. He had extraordinary hand-eye coordination. He was ambidextrous, which means what? Right, he used both hands. And he, in the early 20th century, he would often travel the country. He would go to country clubs or pool halls and stuff like this and hustle people. He was especially adept at hustling country club types in golf. He was a tremendous golfer. And one of his favorite tricks, until word got around too much and he couldn't use it anymore, was to beat somebody in a round of golf and then act apologetic and say, okay, I'll play left-handed this time and we'll do double or nothing. I want you to win your money back. Let's do that. And then, of course, he was even better left-handed and would beat the person playing left-handed. And so he did a lot of stuff like that. Would hustle people out of money in pool halls. He was an excellent billiard player, and would even do things like would challenge people to races, jumping contests. He was a excellent marksman. He would challenge people to shooting contests and stuff like that. I guess there are people maybe who still do that today, but this was the early 20th century. Times were a little more fluid, and somebody could actually, he probably made a fortune several times over hustling people in these ways, and then probably blew most of the money that he ever made living the life of a hustler. But I don't know if people do that anymore on a scale like he did, where you become famous and Sports Illustrated writes stories about you and stuff like that. But certainly he became well known in his day, and the story goes, or his version of the story was that he earned his nickname Titanic in Joplin, Missouri, when he managed to win $500 off of a guy in a pool game. He then bet the guy double or nothing that he could jump all the way over the pool table without touching it. And when he did it, he won even more money off the guy. And his story was that he was over in the corner counting his money, and somebody asked the guy that he had just hustled, who is that guy? Or what's his name? And he said, well, it must be Titanic because he sinks everybody. And so this was, you know, early 20th century, not long after the Titanic. So that's how he gets his nickname.